I do want to talk about some of the challenges happening in Australian rules football. For the sixth time in about a year, the league has suspended for at least 4 games another player for the use of homophobic slurs. And I want to start this conversation on the side of the policy, right, and the benefits of punitive policies and the place that they have in advocacy and allyship efforts. AT, so maybe just starting with you, I think there's some importance about holding people accountable, right, and having these types of policies in place. But when you think about that accountability and what's happening, what comes to mind?
I actually don't know of a league that doesn't have policies and consequences. And I think, and it's the same, like I go to a lot of NWSL games and, people will say it's free speech. I can say whatever I want. And entering into, you're essentially like buying a ticket, for example, you're entering a contract, an agreement saying,
Mm.
I'm going to attend this event and I will refrain from saying racist things, saying homophobic things or transphobic things, and that this is a space for everybody. I think that goes for players as well, because there are people on the team who hold these identities as well, and it may seem like a lot, right? Like six in 1 year that are being suspended or investigated. And I think taking away these explicit policies are, that just gives it free range to say whatever. And it's harder to, I think, to like that would actually take everything back some because there's no consequences for saying harmful things that lead to also physically harmful things. And so I think like I'm based in San Diego, and I think of the incident with Landon Donovan, who was coaching the Loyals, and there was a racist incident that happened 1 week, and he like nothing happened. And then the following week, there was a transphobic slur or a homophobic slur that was said on the pitch. And after connecting with his team and with the players who were like victimized by these like hate words, he pulled his team from. He's like, we're not going to play if there's going to be no action on this. It's not worth it to compromise our values and the role models and what sports is about. And so he pulled his team they forfeited. And I think that kind of message is important. It obviously resonated with the team, where they were in agreement to do this, to take that action. And also, the piece on, I don't know that punishment alone is going to change folks' opinion, but it sets up a boundary of respect. It sets up a boundary of safety, right? And when you sign a contract, when you engage in that agreement, if you don't follow it, then there should be consequences. And I think, finding other words to use if you're feeling frustrated, like I think we too often allow and give a pass to taking it out on an identity, even if that wasn't your intention, but to use that identity. But it actually, again, statistically speaking, research-based speaking, actually has an impact, a negative impact on everybody, not just folks from that one identity group. So I think sports, especially at the professional level, uh, there is an example and a role model, I think, responsibility that they have. And I think in terms of like keeping folks safe and keeping the environment safe and welcome to everybody, again, you don't have to agree with an identity. You also don't have to tear it down.
Yeah, and Hudson, we talk a lot about fire prevention versus firefighting, and I get the firefighting side of this. Something bad happens, like there's a policy, they need to be suspended, perhaps they need to be fined. I'm more interested in fire prevention side of things because clearly the firefighting isn't working at the rate it needs to. because this is happening at a fairly high clip, right? Like, 6 may not sound like a lot, but we're not seeing 6 MLS players suspended. We're not seeing 6 NBA players.
Yeah.
Maybe I hope in the next season.
Yeah.
But on the fire prevention side of things, clearly there's work to be done so that we don't have to get to the point of having to suspend people because we've more transformed culture for people to understand that's not okay.
Yeah. So let me say, I'm somebody who's had the opportunity to work directly with entire NBA teams after similar incidences, Major League Baseball players, meeting in a random hotel conference room after instances like this. I've done probably, I don't know, 10 Zoom calls with players after instances like this. So I'm often working with male professional athletes in the United States after things like this have occurred. In general, what we want is two things. We want to understand, we want a player to understand why it's important that they should care, and two, what we want them to do differently moving forward. In sports, or at least in men's sports, the why, it can be really, really tricky to connect to a player. What sometimes happens in instances like this, or at least like when we're already talking about a punitive conversation, the why isn't because we're talking about what's right or wrong. The why is because, we're gonna get, fined by FIFA, or, we're gonna get blasted in the media. So the why sometimes doesn't land in the ways that we might hope it should. The why also, like, as much as I want players to like behave more ethically and kindly for the right reasons, a lot of times that's not the thing that connects with a lot of players. A lot of it's like, I want to have as long a career as possible. I want to have as many corporate sponsorship and endorsement deals as possible. Yes, I understand that I have diverse young fans and I don't want to offend or hurt those young people, but unfortunately, I think right now we're in a state where the why for a lot of players starts with me and like, what's in it for me and why should I care? So part one of this is, I don't think the AFL or a lot of leagues necessarily are helping players develop their why proactively, right? In the NBA, I had the chance to work with every incoming NBA player for 8 years in a row. And we would talk with Jason Collins, and I would sit with players and we talk about the why. We would talk about, what does it mean to be a professional? What does it mean to be a champion or a leader? And, really trying to help players connect, develop, and articulate their why, because, the average career of so many of these players is like 3 years. So your why is about your ethics, your values, who you are. But then part two is the what. What do we want to do about it? And what do we want you to do differently? So I think the other challenge of this in the AFL is, right now, suspensions aren't working, right? Like sometimes that can be the why for a player of like, oh, I'm going to get suspended or I'm going to get fined. But I also think that if the punishment is not proportional to the injury, or the punishment is not actually leading to the intended change of behavior, then we have to kind of reevaluate the approach, right? And I'll say, just like in MLS, for instance, one of their biggest challenges is not necessarily players who are entering the draft from the States, but players who are coming from abroad, maybe coming from a different culture, and they don't know the expectations that are placed upon them in this new role. So I think the too long didn't read of it all is, we have to be proactive instead of reactive. As soon as you start engaging in a reactive conversation, it's not for the right reasons. It's basically to minimize public pressure, to be honest. And it's usually not received as like oh, I now really care about this community and this issue. But I think that if we can engage in enough proactive conversations about our values, what type of culture we want to create, what kind of legacy we want to leave behind, both on and off the field of play, that's when we've seen players opt not to behave in that way. I think it's been, the NBA has done a great job not having players get fined, not having a lot of those punitive things. The other thing I would just say is for the NBA, it was a minimum $50,000 fine. I didn't care if you're a rookie or a veteran. Like, it was so clear that if you did X, this would be the consequence of it. And so I also think that, at least for the AFL, maybe the punishment isn't sized right to make a player not want to run the risk of receiving that punishment.
Yep. Yeah.
End of rant.
End of rant.
Good rant.
I don't know if you have anything to add on to that, but otherwise, I think this was a great conversation. Yeah.
And one thing I would just add is, like, across sports in general, like, we don't carve out space to talk about our values nearly enough. And that's especially true for elite athletes, right? When you're like an elite player, you kind of get ushered into this, okay, the dollars are coming, the visibility is coming, the career is coming, and a lot of those things that would maybe support your mental development, your emotional development, your ethical development completely fall off the wayside. So I just think that in general, in sports across the board, we're giving athletes this amazing platform and visibility through play, through sport, to be role models and leaders and inspire a generation. But we're not also pairing that with personal development to help them handle that platform with the grace or they're not meeting the measure of that moment because they haven't been given the opportunity to do that by the sporting system they're a part of. So we have to do better for the players if we expect the players to do better for the LGBTQ community or any other community.
Quick anecdote from me. I was from one of the soccer games I was officiating recently. End of the first half, beginning of the second half, teams are coming out. And one of the girls who's on the sideline to cheer her team up, goes, "Let's go!" Just not negative or anything like that. And I kind of just turned and looked at her because you're technically not supposed to swear, so everyone can hear you like that. And she said, "Is that against the rules?" And the coach walked right by me and looked at her and said, "It's also the standard." Right? And he goes, "Yeah, it's a rule, but it's also our standard." And she just looked down. She knew at that moment, like, the values of the team, right? In that moment, it wasn't about the rules. It was about this team who had won national championships in the not so distant past. It was the standard and the values that were expected of them. And that was one of the first times I had seen that, right? It wasn't about whether or not it was against the rules. It was the standard of what to expect to be a part of something like that. So that's kind of nifty. Well, I think that brings us to the close to the 30-minute mark, the end of this week's segment. Appreciate everyone for tuning in, and we will be back soon. Thank you to both of you.
Thanks, y'all.